I think you've taken a wrong turn, old-timer. This area is restricted. The voice was sharp, laced with the casual arrogance of a young man who had never known true weakness. It cut through the quiet reverence of the salt-laced air, a discordant note in a place of honor. Samuel Croft didn't turn. He kept his gaze fixed on the cold black granite of the memorial wall. His name wasn't on it, but the names of men he'd trained, men he'd led, and men he'd buried were etched there forever. His gnarled fingers, the knuckles swollen with arthritis and the skin thin as parchment, rested lightly on the polished surface, tracing a name only he could see in his mind's eye. He was 86 years old, a frail-looking figure in a worn canvas jacket and faded denim jeans that had seen better decades. His back was slightly stooped, his hair a wisp of white, but his eyes, reflected faintly in the stone, were a startlingly clear and steady blue. They were eyes that had seen the world through the gray lens of war and the golden haze of peace, and had lost none of their focus. "Did you hear me, Pops? Are you deaf?" The voice was closer now. Samuel could feel the presence behind him, young, powerful, radiating an aggressive energy that felt like static electricity in the air. He slowly turned, his movements deliberate and economical, betraying none of the aches that settled deep in his bones like silt in a riverbed. Standing before him was a Navy SEAL, the very picture of modern warfare. Lieutenant Mason was tall, with a jaw that looked like it was carved from the same granite as the wall and muscles that strained against the fabric of his uniform. Flanking him were 6 other men, all cast from the same mold, young, confident, and radiating an aura of invincibility that comes from being the tip of the spear. They were the inheritors of the legacy Samuel and his kind had forged in blood and secrecy. "This is the grinder," Mason said, gesturing with a thumb toward the infamous asphalt courtyard where SEAL candidates were physically and mentally broken down only to be rebuilt as warriors. "It's a training area for active personnel, not a retirement home tour." A few of the other SEALs snickered. Samuel's gaze swept over them, calm and unblinking. He didn't see 7 elite warriors. He saw 7 boys, their faces still smooth, their eyes yet to hold the haunted emptiness of real loss. He saw children playing with the deadly tools he had helped to design. "I know where I am," Samuel said. His voice was quiet, a low rumble that seemed to come from his chest, not his throat, holding a gravelly texture like stones worn smooth by a current. Mason's smirk widened. He clearly mistook the old man's calm for senility. "Right, well, time to move along. We've got a CQC drill to run, and I don't want you getting hurt when you trip over your own feet." Samuel didn't move. He simply stood his ground, a weathered oak in the path of a summer storm. This quiet defiance seemed to infuriate the young lieutenant more than any shouted retort could have. It was a challenge to his authority, to his very perception of the world's hierarchy, where youth and strength were paramount. "Look," Mason said, his voice taking on a harder edge as he stepped closer, invading Samuel's personal space. "I don't have time for this. You need to leave now." He punctuated the last word by placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder, intending to steer him away like a lost child. The moment Mason's fingers wrapped around the thin fabric of the old jacket, something shifted. It wasn't just in Samuel's posture, which straightened almost imperceptibly. The stoop of age momentarily vanishing, something changed in the air itself. The temperature seemed to drop. For Samuel, the touch was a trigger, the rough texture of the lieutenant's glove, the pressure on his collarbone. It wasn't 2023 at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado anymore. It was 1950 on a frozen, windswept hill overlooking the Chosin Reservoir. The air was razor thin and smelled of pine, cordite, and blood. The man grabbing him wasn't a cocky American officer. He was a Chinese soldier, his face contorted in a silent scream, his bayonet aimed for Samuel's gut. The memory was so vivid, so total that for a fraction of a second, The sun-drenched courtyard became a landscape of icy death. In that frozen moment, instinct honed over decades of survival took over. "I said move," Mason repeated, giving a firm shove. "I'd advise you to take your hand off me, Lieutenant," Samuel said, his voice still quiet, but now holding a new quality. It was the sound of a steel door swinging shut on its heavy hinges. It was a warning. Mason laughed out loud, a harsh barking sound. "Or what? You going to tell me stories about the good old days? You in what army, Grandpa?" He looked back at his team, winking. "All right, you heard him, the old-timer is threatening me." He turned back to Samuel, his smile gone and replaced by a mask of condescending pity. "You know what? I'm feeling generous. You seem to think you belong here. Let's see what you've got. You and me, right here on the grinder. A little lesson in respect for your elders." The other SEALs grinned, sensing some sport. This was perfect, a way to blow off steam before their drill and put this lost old man in his place. One of them, a young petty officer named Jennings, looked uneasy. He saw the stillness in the old man's eyes, a placid depth that felt less like weakness and more like the calm at the center of a hurricane. There was something wrong about this, something deeply wrong. "What's the matter?" Mason taunted, seeing Samuel's hesitation, afraid you'll break a hip. Samuel Croft let out a long, slow breath, not hesitating out of fear, but giving the boy one last chance to walk away. When it was clear the lieutenant wouldn't take it, Samuel gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "All right, son," he said softly. "A lesson it is." The 7 SEALs led him onto the black mat of the training area, their boots making soft thudding sounds on the rubber as they spread out, forming a loose circle, their amusement palpable. Lieutenant Mason took the center, bouncing on the balls of his feet like a prizefighter, shaking his arms loose. He was 190 pounds of honed muscle and explosive power, a product of the most rigorous military training pipeline in the world. Facing a man who weighed maybe 140 pounds soaking wet and looked like a strong gust of wind might knock him over. "Any rules, or are you just going to swing that walker of yours?" one of the men joked. Samuel ignored him, took off his worn jacket, folded it neatly, placed it on the ground, and stepped to the center of the mat, his posture relaxed, hands hanging loosely at his sides. He didn't assume a fighting stance, he just stood there waiting. "Come on then," Mason said, beckoning with his fingers. "Show me what you've got." Mason lunged with a fast, powerful takedown attempt meant to close distance and overwhelm an opponent with superior size. He expected to slam into a frail body, to feel brittle bones give way, to watch the old man collapse. He did not expect the old man to simply disappear. As Mason's hands reached where Samuel's chest had been, Samuel pivoted on the ball of his left foot in a subtle, economical shift of weight, becoming part of the charge. His right hand rose to guide, not block, his gnarled fingers catching Mason's wrist with shocking speed as his left hand found the elbow. In a blur of leverage and anatomical precision, Samuel amplified and redirected Mason's momentum. A slight twist of the wrist and a gentle push on the elbow turned the lieutenant's strength against him. Pain shot up Mason's arm as he was yanked off balance, feet leaving the mat before he slammed onto his back with a breath-stealing thud, staring up at the blue California sky in bewilderment. It had taken less than 2 seconds. The 6 remaining SEALs froze in stunned silence, their laughter dying in their throats. Before they could process it, a bigger, angrier SEAL roared and charged in low for a tackle aimed at Samuel's knees. Samuel stepped forward into the attack, chopping down precisely on the back of the man's neck and striking a nerve cluster below the skull. The SEAL went limp and collapsed in a boneless heap. 2 more rushed him from either side, trying teamwork a mistake. They were thinking like a team, but Samuel was thinking like a predator. He moved with fluidity that defied his age, sidestepping the man on the right and using his body as a shield against the one on the left. driving an elbow under the ribs of the first attacker with no wasted motion. Croft simply looked at the general, a flicker of sad recognition in his eyes, and gave a slow, tired nod. "It's been a long time, General," he said quietly. "I go by Samuel now." The general held his salute, his arm trembling with emotion, then turned his flinty eyes to the petrified Captain Hayes. His voice dropped, lethally cold. "Captain, what is your name?" "Hayes, sir." "Captain Robert Hayes," he stammered, rigid with fear. "Captain Hayes," the general said, voice dangerously low, "you had your hands on a living Medal of Honor recipient. A man whose real name is so classified, it's still redacted in the official archives. A man who single-handedly held off an entire NVA battalion for 3 nights to protect a downed pilot. A man this country left for dead because no one believed he could possibly survive." He paused, letting the weight of his words crush the young captain. "That downed pilot," the general continued, his voice cracking, "was my father." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Hayes's pale face turned to ash as the ground seemed to fall away beneath him. He looked at Samuel's steady, forgiving eyes and saw not a feeble old man but a titan, a ghost from history standing before him. "This man," the general boomed, regaining his full command voice, "is not a guest. He is not a visitor. He is a shrine. This ground is hallowed because he is on it. His presence honors us, Captain. Do you understand that?" "Yes, sir," Hayes choked, his arrogance shattered. I didn't know, sir." "I'm so sorry." He turned to Samuel, pleading. "Sir, my deepest apologies." Samuel raised a hand, stopping him with quiet authority. "The boy was doing his job, General," he said calmly. He saw an old man who looked out of place. He was protecting the decorum of the ceremony. There's no fault in that. This grace, this immediate forgiveness, devastated Hayes more than any reprimand could. It showed the vast gulf between his own pride and the monumental character of the man he had disrespected. From the edge of the formation, Leo broke rank and ran toward them. The ceremony just concluded. He rushed to his grandfather's side, confusion and concern on his face. "Grandpa, what's going on? Are you okay?" He glanced between Samuel and the general. He had always known his grandfather was a Marine, but Samuel never talked about it. He said he'd been a mechanic, worked on engines, fixed lawnmowers, told bad jokes. He was just Grandpa. Samuel smiled warmly and placed a gnarled hand on Leo's shoulder. "I'm fine, Leo, just fine. I was just meeting an old colleague's son." General Morrison lowered his salute at last, though his posture remained respectful. He looked at Leo, then Samuel. "Your grandfather is the finest Marine I have never had the honor of serving with," he said. "Everything you learned here, everything you aspire to be, he's the embodiment of it. Honor, courage, commitment." Then he turned to the crowd. "I want everyone to hear this," he called out, gesturing for Samuel to join him on the reviewing stand. Hesitantly, Samuel complied, walking with the slow, steady gait of a man in no hurry. He stood beside the general, looking out at the sea of Marines, his grandson among them. The general recounted the story with passion, speaking of a secret war, of men who fought without recognition, who died without glory, of Spike Team Dakota and their impossible mission to rescue a high-value pilot from a fortified prison, camp deep in enemy territory. He described how the mission failed, how the team was ambushed, how their leader, known only as the Ghost, ordered the survivors to fall back while he covered them. He held out for 72 hours alone, against overwhelming odds, long enough to secure the pilot's rescue before being overrun. He was declared killed in action, awarded the nation's highest honor in secret, his name sealed away. "We believed he was a ghost for 50 years, the general said, voice trembling. "But he is here today. He is with us." A ripple of applause rose and swelled into thunderous ovation as everyone stood the Marines. Their families, the officers honoring the quiet old man in the worn brown jacket. Leo stood beside him, tears streaming as he finally understood the burden his grandfather had carried in silence. Later, after the crowds thinned, Samuel sat on a bench with Leo. Captain Hayes approached, hat in hand, face full of shame. "Sir," he whispered, "there's nothing I can say to excuse my behavior. I was arrogant and wrong. I failed to see the man in front of me. I only saw the clothes he was wearing." Samuel looked up, his clear blue eyes holding no malice. "A uniform doesn't make a man, Captain," he said softly. "It just tells you what job he does. The man is inside. Sometimes you have to look harder to see him. You're a young officer. You have a long career ahead. Learn from this. Learn to see the person, not the rank or the uniform. That's where true strength lies." He patted the bench. "Sit down, son. Tell me about yourself." As the sun set over the island, casting long shadows across the parade deck, an unlikely trio sat together, a living legend, a brand new Marine, and a humbled young captain who had just learned the most important lesson of his life. They didn't talk about war or medals, but about family, the future, and the quiet dignity that binds all generations of service. The greatest heroes are often the ones you'd never notice, the quiet souls who carry the weight of the world without complaint, their valor hidden not by secrecy, but by profound humility. They walk among us every day, waiting for us to have the wisdom to see them. If this story reminds you of the quiet heroes in your own life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that honor the unseen giants who walk among us.